All right. Hi, everyone. This is a little video, meet the trainer and meet one of their fantastic dogs. So my name is Becky Johnson. I'm one of the trainers at Spicy Potatoes. I have over 4 years shelter dog experience. I volunteer for the Canadian Animal Task Force as a dog handler, one of my favorite volunteer roles I've come across so far. Lots of years of experience doing dog walking, and you name it. Dogs have been in my life for a very long time. This guy here is my boy Newt. He was quite a newt. Um, this guy was found roaming on a campground in Drumheller area, picked up by Hannah SPCA. They had a uh, facility that was mainly with cats, so a lot of them were not dogs. They're like, we have this dog in care with us, this adolescent that does not want to go outside. So I'm like, okay. At the time, it was my first week at ARCS. I was like, what dog doesn't want to go outside? Like, it was just not a thing to me. I'm like, outside is amazing. Why does this dog not think outside is great? So they sent this cute little video. There was Newt. He was walking through the facility. He walked past a baby carriage. There was a little baby in it. And he was just like, oh, hi. Is he just like anxiously walking along? And I'm like, okay, well, he doesn't want to hurt the cats or the baby, which is perfect. And we'll see how he comes when he comes into care. I laid eyes on him. I'm like, that dog is coming home with me. Don't ask me why. I'm like, that dog's can be really challenging. Um, but he's gonna come home with me. So I kind of looked at him, waited through it. It was really cute because we saw him in the run. He was all the way at the back, and then you'd approach, and then he'd scuttle forward, and then he would go only through the shelter if you sat cross-legged on the floor with him, and he'd go from lap to lap to go outside to pee. So that was the beginning of Newt's journey, as far as I know, with him. One of my coworkers and now friends introduced us together, so he's kind of an interesting little fun boy. So I've had him for about, I want to say about 4 years now. He's very, very unique, very special. So I found when I brought him home that he was very fearful. So one of my specialties is working with fearful dogs, and one of the things I find so great about them is they let you know when they're ready. It's not the other way around. Us humans are so worried about like deadlines and timelines, and I can get this done in a day or an hour or a week. Dogs are not so much, especially dogs like Newt. So it took him some time to get ready to go to the outdoors. Doorways and thresholds were really tough for him. It could be due to underexposure or fear that he might be left outside. I'm not sure. We can only look forward to those observations. But what I did notice is he was very keen on my ground floor window into my backyard. He was like, okay, I like that. Kind of poked at it a couple times. So I'm like, what the heck? Open that door. He kind of scooted right out and then started running around in my backyard with my other boy Shadow at the time. And I'm like, here's that fix. Here's something that gives him that comfort that he can go in and out of, kind of like that doggy door, and giving him that opportunity to move around, come back in. So he loved that. He was still quite fearful of doorways, but we found something that worked for him. So that's the part of being so malleable for dogs, or flexible, letting them kind of choose that point that they're ready with. I find often with fearful dogs, it takes them some time to get comfortable. So often we find this period of mischief first before we start to kind of see them come back down. So with him as well, when I get home from work, you'd hide under kitchen tables or just like kind of stress pant or shake. And then he started to jump on my kitchen table. And I'm like, well, bud, you're getting confident, but we can't really go on the kitchen table because eventually we'll have visitors. So let's see if we can build some other behaviors. He also had resource guarding towards other dogs, because if you've had to fight for resources before, not fun. So you really want to make sure you're healthy, right? So I had to feed him separately in a different room from my other boys, making sure he had that opportunity to eat in peace. That was also followed with, he would also really look at me when I had foods or anything with that crinkly package. So like granola bar wrappers or chip bags, he was just like, oh, that crinkles, that must be food. And his eyes would go huge, and he would just want that package so bad. So honestly, at that point, I'm like, you've gone through a lot. Like, here's the wrapper. Like, it's not that exciting. I'll get you things that are way more exciting than just the wrapper. That could be stuffed Kongs. That could be food puzzle toys, snuffle mats, right? Like, there's such a variety of things we can do that's more than a little wrapper. He's still a little wrapper crazy to this day, but it's definitely chilled out. through this, we kind of built on those areas that he was comfortable. So that started out with walks in very quiet areas. I couldn't walk in the neighborhood I lived in. I lived in off of 17th Avenue in Calgary, so very busy streets. So I took him out hiking instead to different areas. So those quiet hikes away from traffic, he loved it. That's where he could be most himself. His tail would wag. He was so excited for life, sniffing the trails, looking for squirrels. There was one time, I think it was peak COVID, we're like, we're all going to go hiking together. And we ended up going hiking in Banff, and we were alone going up the side of this mountain near a lake. And we're trudging along. This is fine. This is fine. And then I think I took a counter past a sign into the bushes. I'm like, oh, this is fine. There's a kind of a trail here, I suppose. And it started to get really quiet. And then I started to hear things crack. And I was like, okay, I got to abort mission. And that's where Newt was like, I'm going to hide under this bush in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, but if something comes out of those trees, I'm going to toss you at them. I probably wouldn't. I'd probably try to run too. But like, I'm like, come on, can we please go? So we kind of scuttled back. I kind of like hitched him over my shoulder, took him running back. And then we saw a cute little couple and they're like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, we're fine. And they're like, we were looking for you. There was an elk. And I'm like, oh my, like that's much bigger than all of us. That's going to be crazy. So we scuttled back in. So really being an advocate for how he best liked things. Like he's never really been a fan of car rides, but car rides have been that vehicle, so to speak, to places where he feels more comfortable, like private off-leash parks and the like, or those indoor opportunities. We did try for things like indoor agility or training in buildings, but then we started to find that he has some noise sensitivity. So when the furnace started to go off, he would hit the deck and then start to run, or echoes in hallways. And I'm like, okay, like you can't just be comfortable in my house, but we'll conserve that. We'll make that your safe space, and we'll work through that to make you more comfortable. At the time, one of my friends, one of my close colleagues and friends, recommended her a veterinarian, and I'm like, okay. She's like, oh, she specializes in behavior, and I'm like, all right, well maybe it might be due to check it out, because like I've tried a lot as far as enrichment, complementary therapies. We've tried thunder shirts, we've tried adaptal spray, calming essential oils, you name it, like anything and everything. Even trying things that would buffer the sounds on the ears. And of course, with him, he's like, I don't want things on my ears too long. Of course, he's calling me a liar right now because my hands are there. But definitely all these complementary therapies that don't deal with the underlying fear or anxiety or stress. It just kind of buffers them a little bit. So I went for the consult. It was in depth, like it was great because it was very validating for some of the concerns that I did have, and also those options for more. She introduced me to scent work, which was really good for Newt. He really has ended up enjoying that quite a bit, but also behavior medication. So that's where I always like to be that advocate for our dogs. Is there so much us humans can do, but there's certain things we can't do if there is a chemical imbalance in our dogs. And if we're finding that plateau or point where we can't progress further, there might be a point where we need to reach out for help from someone else with more experience or a different specialty, just to see if there's anything we aren't missing. Newt is on a cocktail of medication, including fluoxetine and clonidine. I would definitely talk to your veterinarian. That might not be the best cocktail for every dog out there. Some of them based off of how the panic response is versus fear, if there is any aggression in there as well. But I'm happy to say after a few months of him being on this cocktail, we've fudged the numbers a few times to get those kinds of things going. He has his daily meds, and then he has his, I guess, discretionary meds when things go off, kind of like thunderworks or fireworks, or thunder or fireworks. My goodness. So that way he has a little bit extra space to cope with it. And then you can see here, he's like, I am super relaxed. And then finding that too is like with the medication, with a good behavior modification program, including enrichment, little challenges, like we do try to take him to new places or take him for a walk in the neighborhood, not very far, but just enough to give him that little bit of exposure. And he's been able to conquer a couple of those things now, like his house training has certainly gotten better. He'll go in the backyard and then the recycling truck will go by and he's like, okay, what is that? Okay, I'm still okay. So it's really nice to not see that panic response for Newt. Newt was recently introduced to barn hunt this year, so it's finding a little gerbil in a tube, and he absolutely loves it. So definitely getting him into those sports. We've also tried some canicross and some dog sledding as well. and just trying those things that are a little bit more natural without those heavy artificial environments. I really want to try to get him back into agility again, now that he has had that time to really cope with that medication, get used to it and comfortable with it. So we might see us around in some agility rings, but you'll definitely see us around for some stuff through NASDA and Barn Hunt this year. And it's always nice to see like those different kinds of considerations, or the dogs we live at home, because I find sometimes we're a little worried, right, when we have dogs of our own. They're like, what is a trainer's dog like? Are they perfect? And I can guarantee you none of my dogs are perfect. They're all work in progresses, just as we are. They all have their own things. Like I call Newt a Newt. He's quite keen and quite different, loves his people, but he definitely has those little challenges. But how can you like not stretch his face? Like, look at this, all of this. Like, this is the best thing. Someone is touching me. Me? My goodness. I'm gonna fly with all this extra skin. So here's a quick note on Newt, and thank you so much for joining. I hope to see you in the next video.